Hello, my friends. This is Dr. Eric Greenberg, professor of power. I've been meaning to make this video for the last couple of days, but I just got sidetracked. And the other day when I tried to make it, the gardeners were here and the lawnmower sound. But anyway, I'm going to give you a quick TLDR version of what I have to say, and then I'll go into more detail. So any of you who just want to listen to this for about the next 15 seconds, you'll get the point. So if you know me, you know I'm a power lifter. I'm an older lifter. I'm 55. I did set some state records in my age and weight category a couple of years back as an older lifter. I had to take a couple of years off for health reasons and focus on other things. But the TLDR is I am starting to plan to compete again in my mid 50s. And specifically, I plan to break some records in that age category of 55 to 59 in one federation, 55 to 60 in another federation. Actually, one of them actually doesn't have any records set yet. The other one does, so I'll have to break those. But anyway, bottom line is, beyond that, one of these that I'm focusing on, one of the records specifically, is I would like to squat 600 pounds by the age of 60. And many of you know that I'm a natty lifter. I've never used a performance-enhancing drug in my entire life, steroids or otherwise. It's just not in my philosophical framework. So that's kind of part of this record, because there are people bigger and stronger than me who are using performance-enhancing drugs like that have have some records. But in my particular categories, my age category, weight category, equipment category, and drug-tested categories, some of these records are eminently achievable, definitely. So one of them that I'm looking for is a 600-pound squat by the age of 60. And my motto, my little slogan right now is 5 S's. Squat 600 by 60 sans steroids. All right? Anyway, so that's the TLDR version. Any of you who want to go back to sleep, you've already wasted 2 minutes and 10 seconds of your lives. Sorry about that. Anyway, for the rest of you who've hung on, now I'm going to kind of kick it down a pace, play some of the slow jams. I'm joking around. I'm being silly here. Anyway, so I started lifting when I was about 13 or so, but it was mainly focused on bodybuilding, and that was my raison d'etre. That was my end-all, be-all. I ate, slept, and drank bodybuilding till way into my teens. I competed a little, never won any major titles or anything like that, but I was a natty lifter. And then I stepped away from lifting competitively. I lifted through college, but I didn't lift competitively. And then life got in the way through my 20s, 30s, 40s. And so somewhere about the age of 45, I hadn't been to a doctor in a while, and I went to see a new primary care physician. And he said, all right, you're a little overweight, your blood pressure's a little too high, cholesterol's a little too high, yada, yada. You need to make some changes now while you still can. You're in reasonably good health, but you need to make some changes. Think about what kind of exercise you want to do, what speaks to your heart. And I thought, well, I used to love bodybuilding. Now maybe my body composition has changed. I'm a little fatter now. Maybe that won't change. But I'm strong. So I started going to the gym again at the age of 45, and started lifting whatever I could. And I started realizing, well, yeah, I'm really strong, even if I'm a little too fat. And I thought, well, how about powerlifting? I've never thought of powerlifting. I remember in my youth, I'd be reading Muscle and Fitness magazine, and obviously it was mainly focused on bodybuilding. Some fitness, general fitness, but mainly bodybuilding. And then occasionally you'd have articles on powerlifters, and I'd look at these powerlifters, these big fat slobs, as my grandfather would have said. I thought to myself, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to look like that. I want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, I won't even mention names, because these are amazing human beings now that I'm looking back on, these powerlifters, who at the time I didn't think anything of them. And now 30, 40 years later, I'm like, these guys were giants. I mean, like, not just physically giants, but giants in the field. The giants upon whose shoulders I now stand 40 years later. But anyway, so, at the time I thought, powerlifting, I don't want to be anything like these big fat guys. There's nothing aesthetically pleasing about them at all. So what if they can lift all that weight? Great. Anyway, at the age of 45, I thought, all right, maybe I'll try powerlifting. And I was, as they say, bitten by the iron bug. I just didn't look back. And I found out I was really strong, and I started making gains really quickly. And initially, I was training at the gym at my university where I teach at Loyola Marymount, and I was also working and teaching at another school simultaneously at the time. I was working multiple part-time jobs back at that time, like around 2015, 2016. And the school that I was working at in downtown Los Angeles was right near a very famous powerlifting gym called Barbell Brigade. And so I thought, rather than drive home in traffic at 5:30 p.m. or 6 p.m. and take an hour, hour and a half or whatever, let me just hang around town. I'll go to this other gym, I'll get a membership, I'll train for 2 hours, and then I'll come home at 8 p.m. with no traffic at all. And that's what I did for the better part of a couple of years. I trained at Barbell Brigade, and it was a great environment, great experience. Kudos to Bart and Giovanna Kwan for starting the place and giving an environment for a lot of us hardcore lifters to train. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Thank you. And I worked out there for a couple of years, and later I changed to another gym, to Mission Fitness, which I think at the time really fit my needs and my goals better than Barbell Brigade, and it was also more affordable. And I trained at Mission Fitness for a number of years, so here's to the Grace family, Chris Grace, and I'm drawing a blank. I think is it Wendy Grace is the wife? I love her, but I'm drawing a blank on her name. I think it's Chris and Wendy Grace. Anyway, they made a great environment for people, a lot of whom were expats from Barbell Brigade who couldn't afford Barbell Brigade. Anyway, we loved Mission Fitness, and I met a lot of great people there. Bottom line was, at Barbell, when I was still at Barbell, there was a guy named Lou Galvez. And if you're listening, if you ever see this, Lou, you're awesome. Thank you for doing what you did and saying what you said. I had been training at Barbell Brigade for maybe a couple of months, and he and I would chat, and he would maybe give me a spot or give me some advice or whatever. And he asked me if I ever thought of competing. And I thought, oh no, I'm not good enough to compete. And he said, no, just start, just do it. Just do it. You're never going to be like good enough, or the time's never going to be right. Just do it. Start. And I took his advice and I started competing. And my first competition was in 2016, and it was the Barbell Brigade Open. It was through the USPA, the United States Powerlifting Association. Great federation. And I competed in a division that was just really small. And that's one of the great things about powerlifting, is that there are so many divisions, so many categories that are available to you. So you're not necessarily competing against giants and only one person shall stand. One man enters, one man leaves, or nothing like that. It is the powerlifting sport is so affirming and so supportive. Every gender, every age category, every size, every capacity. Everyone is welcome. Everyone is supported. We support each other. We love each other. Nobody's like, how can I screw them over? How can I sabotage them? And no, I don't want you to win. I don't want you to do well. Screw you. No, we're loving each other. We're hugging each other. You did well, sis or bro, whoever. We love you. Great job. And some of the strongest people I've seen are tiny little people. One of the strongest human beings I ever saw compete was a woman in her mid 50s, 100 and something pounds, and she was deadlifting like 4 times her body weight. And that was applauded, that was praised, that was lauded. All right, it's not just about the 350-pound guys who are lifting twice their body weight. All right, big deal. All right, I'm joking. That's admirable. But anyway, so my first competition, I realized, hey, you know what? I can choose certain categories that will maximize my ability to excel. And so I chose, yes, my age category was Masters 45 to 49, because at the time I think I was 45, I believe. So Masters 45 to 49. So I'm not competing against the 20 and 30-year-old kids. I chose, my weight category was 110 kilogram, or 242 pounds. That was my body weight, and that was my weight class. And then also, I chose the equipment category of Classic Raw, or sometimes called Raw with Wraps. USPA calls it Classic Raw. Which means that you're not using any supportive equipment, whether it's bench shirts, squat suits, deadlift suits, any of the other kind of stuff that some people use in certain categories. That's fine. That's the beautiful thing, is there are all these categories. You can compete in equipped categories. I won't even bother talking about that right now. It's just other ways of being human, other ways of lifting. All right, but a lot of people are going towards what's called Raw, where you're just not using any of the squat suits or equipment or whatever. It's just you and the bar. That's it. You and the bar and your singlet and your, maybe you got wrist wraps or something like that. But there's also this other category, which is sort of an old-fashioned category that's carried over, and it's called Classic Raw. So everything is raw, no supportive equipment except for knee wraps. Now, knee wraps have been used in squatting for decades and decades and decades. And I guess initially the whole idea is, well, you got to support your knees. You know, it's like ace bandages. In fact, for the longest time, they were practically ace bandages. But at some point, maybe in the 70s or 80s, they started using stronger and more resistant knee wraps, and they started using them for support. But it was allowed. It was allowed by the rules. It wasn't against the rules. And it was able to add maybe 30, 40, 50 pounds to your overall squat by basically putting springs around your knees. Okay, it's in the rules. It's not cheating if it's in the rules. So I chose to go into that category because that's what I had always used for squats was knee wraps. So I went into classic raw. Everything is raw, all of your equipment except for knee wraps. So that was a particularly not unique category, but a very small category. And so when I showed up to that first competition, the Barbell Brigade Open in 2016, held at Barbell Brigade in downtown Los Angeles, once again, it was not a drug-tested competition, so I was in with everybody else. But I was masters 45 to 49, 110 kilogram, classic raw equipment. I was the only guy in my division. So I went home with a medal. There was nobody else there. It was just so nice that, I mean, these weren't great numbers. I mean, maybe they were great numbers for beginners. I mean, I was strong, but there were a lot stronger people there than me. And I got a nice little medal. And it was just very affirming to walk home with a medal. And that kept me going. And so the next competition I did was a year later, and I trained hard for it. I took time between those competitions. This one I did was the Metroflex Open at Metroflex Gym in Long Beach, also a fairly well-known gym. But this was a USPA sanctioned competition, and I was able to set 4 state records. It was a drug-tested competition, and that's what I like. I like promoting drug-free lifting. It's really important to me. I'm not going to judge anybody else for using whatever kind of quote-unquote gear they want. That's a term for juicing and whatever. Not physical gear, but liquid gear. Do whatever you want as long as it's within the rules. The rules say you can. We're not going to test you. That's fine. But I like promoting drug-free lifting. I like promoting natty lifting, and I've been like just a natural person my whole life, even before lifting. Just like wanting to try to avoid antibiotics, and I've never used any kind of mind-altering drugs or whatever. Just my whole lifetime has been organic and natural, and that carries over into my lifting. So when I had the opportunity to be in a drug-tested competition, I just took to that like a duck to water. I want to promote that. I want people to understand that you can lift really heavy without drugs. You don't necessarily need the drugs, all right? People are putting up great numbers drug-free. If you choose to use drugs, that should be your choice. And frankly, I think it should be only if you are already at the top of your field and you have exhausted all other options in moving forward and breaking through your barriers or your plateaus. That's my opinion. But I'm not there yet. I don't know if I'll ever be there. I'm proud. I don't want to share the platform with a bottle of steroids. It's kind of the way I look at it. I don't want to say, 10 or 20% of my gains were from these performance-enhancing drugs, the PEDs. No, I don't want to do that. It's all me. I'm a very spiritual kind of lifter. It's only me and God, me and the energies. So anyway, that second competition, Metroflex Open, drug tested, and once again, I competed 242-pound classic raw equipment. I was still 45 to 49 masters category, and I set 4 state records. Nobody had done that in the tested categories before. There were people who had set records in the untested categories, and that was a guy who I met there at that competition. Great guy, and he had the records for 45 to 49. Darren Roebuck. We corresponded a couple of times since then. Darren, if you're ever out there, if you see this, God bless you, man. I'd love to talk with you again. It was great to meet you and great to lift with you. So Darren had already aged out into the next age category up. So he and I weren't competing directly against each other, and I'm glad of that. But he had the records for untested, but that competition was tested. So he was starting to compete in tested competitions, and he was doing the 50 to 54 category at the time. So anyway, but this was the first time that anybody was setting any records in 45 to 49, and that was me. And it wasn't like I was lifting 100 pounds. These were good numbers. These were really good numbers. Off the top of my head, I think my squat was 507. That was a good number for a 46-year-old man at the time, because this was in 2017 and I hadn't yet turned 47. And that was a state record squat. My state record bench press, that wasn't fantastic. I think it was like 275 or whatever, but nobody else had set the record. I had some trouble with bench that day. My deadlift was a very respectable 556. That was great. I was proud of that. And then my total was, I think it was like 1339 or whatever the numbers were. It was like 13 and change. Respectable. So I had 4 state records: the squat, the bench, the deadlift, and the total. And that stood for a couple of years. And the third competition I had done was once again an untested competition at Barbell Brigade. I think it was the same basic competition I did in 2016, but at this time it was in 2018. And no, I didn't set any records, break any records, but I went home with a medal because I was the only guy in my division. So it made me happy. I did not break any of my personal records. I squatted the same amount, 507, and I deadlifted the same amount, 556. My bench went up a little bit, but once again, that wasn't any kind of record. But it just sort of proved to me that this was not a flash in the pan kind of thing. I was carrying those numbers and I was improving. I actually did attempt a squat of 518 that day, but I was disqualified due to a technicality. But I got it up. I went down and I went up, but I think it was uneven bar path and one side may have been dinged due to depth, blah, 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 whatever. It was great. Good day. That was the last time I competed, was in 2018. I haven't competed since then. I've had some minor medical challenges that have held me back, a couple of injuries, some digestive issues. I had some minor heart issues at the time that were taken care of. I'm fine now, I'm fine. But these were things that distracted me for several years, so I wasn't able to focus on competing. So from 2018 till the present moment, I haven't competed. I have continued lifting, but I've had a lot of ups and downs. There were times where I was really improving my numbers and getting back to a point almost where I was in 2018, where I was squatting over 500 pounds and I was deadlifting about 500 and change and whatever. But I kept having to take time off. So anyway, so recently I finally got up the guts and I looked at the records, and yes, two somebodies had broken several of my records in the USPA. Off the top of my head, I don't have their names in front of me. I was actually planning to print it off or bring it in front of me and read it to the camera, but it doesn't matter. Whoever they are, Mark somebody was one of them. I'm sure they're wonderful people. I don't hold any grudges. I had to get over my ego at first. Like I said, I didn't look at these records for several years. I didn't want to think of somebody breaking my records. That was my ego. But when I finally looked at it the other day, and I saw one person had broken, I think, the squat and the deadlift. Somebody else had broken the bench and the total, if I recall. And that was in USPA, drug tested, classic raw equipment, 242 pound class. So 2 guys had broken 2 of my 4 records. Great. And I just had to get over myself. I basically had to convince myself that, on some level, maybe I contributed to encouraging other guys in their 40s and 50s to take up lifting competitively. Maybe that was something that I can take just a little bit of credit for, because there's not a lot of people in my age at this point still lifting competitively. And so, I patted myself on the back, and, time marches on. I don't have a time machine, so I can't go back and break their records and take back the title. I can't do that because I'm not 45 to 49 anymore. I'm now 55. In fact, I missed the category. I missed the time to compete in 50 to 54. Fine, it is what it is. I was healing up. I was getting my act together. That's fine. But I'm now in 55 to 59 in one federation, or 59 to 60 in another federation. So that's where I'm going to compete. And as I said, I think it's, let me see, I think it's USAPL, which is another fine federation that I think I will compete in at some point. USAPL, if I recall correctly, nobody has set records in that particular category. So classic raw equipment, or they call it raw with wraps, 110 kilogram weight class, 55 to 60 tested. I think, if I recall, nobody has set any records. I'll have to look at this. Anyway, but some of the numbers, the standard numbers that they have, are eminently doable. It's like 474 pound squat, and I got back up to that a year or so ago when I was actively training heavily. I think I had a squat of 495 here in my backyard. This is where I am in my backyard here, where I train occasionally. Other times I train at school at my university. I help coach or sponsor the weightlifting club, the student weightlifting club, with my dear friend and co-sponsor Anatol Humka. At some point, I want to do a video with him because he's a strongman competitor. But anyway, that's where I train the other time. But I was doing my lifting at school and here in the backyard, and I was squatting 495 or thereabouts. It is not that far off from my state record of 507. So point is, I can still get back to that category. These are not merely lifts from 8 years ago. These are lifts that I have replicated not too long ago. I can get back up there again. So I can produce a squat of 474 and set that record according to that that standard that was set by the federation. So anyway, yeah, a lot of these numbers that are either in one federation, they're standards that have been posted, but the records have not actually been set by human beings. I can get those numbers. In another federation, once again, forgive me, I don't have them in front of me. The other federation, the records that have been set are eminently breakable by me. I can do it. I can do it easily. If I give myself the next 6 months or a year, whatever, yeah, I can get back to that level. So a squat in the high 400s will be easy for me. Deadlift in the low to mid 500s will be easy for me at that time. What I'd like to do, so this is my goal. And I know I've taken 21 minutes of your time already. Whoever's still listening to this, I'd like to squat 600 by the age of 60. I don't know exactly when it'll happen. It may take 2, 3, 4 years. I don't know. I've got 4.5 years left to do that. But there is one guy on the national level who has, so he's my national level counterpart. I'm trying to remember his name, but I think it was a USPA record, 242 pound class, classic raw equipment. I'm trying to remember if that one was he tested? I think he's tested. Yes, I think it was tested. So drug tested, classic raw, 242 pound, 55 to 59 age category, and his national record is 606 pounds. So, I'm not saying, oh, I'm gunning for you, dude, I'm coming to get you. No, that's not my way of doing things, and I don't think that is how powerlifting has to work. I'm just saying I'd like to be his next door neighbor. I'd like to get 600 pounds as well. And if I can exceed that and break that record, great. I'm hoping that he'd be happy for me. All right, and then maybe he'd break it again, and I'd be happy for him. It's all about us supporting each other and making the human race stronger. Not just I'm going to be the best and I'm going to kick all your butts. No, we're bringing up the level of capacity of the human being, and I think that's a lot of why I'm doing this stuff. It's not just about ego. It's not just about masculinity. That's toxic masculinity. I'm not that way. For me, lifting is a spiritual exercise. This is about creating something with the mind. This is about mind over matter, and that's one of the things that I've learned in the last. How long have I been lifting? Since 2015. So about what, 11 years as a serious competitive power lifter, not counting my years of bodybuilding as a youth. So over the last 11 years, what I've learned is, this is about mind over matter. You can come to the gym at some point and just be tired, kind of distracted, and you're like, oh, I can't do anything, and your first couple of lifts are just crappy. But if you get into the right mindset, suddenly you've improved things and you're lifting way more. Things just snap into place. This is about mind over matter. This is about the brain controlling the central nervous system, controlling the muscles, and lifting weights that most human beings cannot lift. This is about training ourselves to be able to do that. And so for me, this is about improving the lives of human beings, of helping us as a species move forward and learn how to connect the spirit with the body. So anyway, 600 pound squat by the age of 60, sans steroids, that's my goal. That's just the one thing. But I want to focus on competing soon, like in the next 6 months to a year, something like that, and getting some good state records in the drug tested divisions of several federations, whether it's USPA or ESAPL. Maybe I'll do both of them, and just showing that people still can be strong well into their 50s and beyond. And I know a couple of lifters who are in their 60s who are strong people. strong people, and I applaud them, and I want to be like them when I'm in my 60s. But at this point, I'm in my 50s. So I'm representing what I jokingly call the coalition of older lifters, or cool. So hashtag cool, because we're cool. So anyway, strength is not only for the young. There is such a thing as old man strength or older man strength or whatever. And it's not just men, it's women as well. I've seen all sorts of people of all sizes, ages, genders lifting heavy weights, and we can do it. And we need to be fit. We need to continue to be fit and do resistance training well into our 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and so forth. That's part of longevity, and that's partly why I do this. Partly the spirit and partly longevity. So anyways, 25 minutes. I've wasted enough of your time. Find me on the internet, Professor of Power, drericgreenberg.com, drericgreenberg.com, whatever. And my main thing is I'm a scholar of religious studies. I'm an interfaith activist. That's what my day job is. I'm sure I'm going to be posting on that other times. Also, I am going to be relaunching my podcast from a couple of years ago, and I'm going to talk about all sorts of things, including spirituality and interfaith dialogue and human rights and activism and, yes, lifting and health. But today is about health and lifting. So once again, the 5 S's for me, that's my slogan. Squat 600 by 60 Sans Steroids and break some more records. So anyway, God bless all of you and have a wonderful rest of the day, and thanks for listening.